Hello, wannabes and creators, and welcome back to The Business of Art, the podcast that demystifies business for artists. And today we're talking to Brandon Perlow, publisher of New Paradigm Studios. Brandon's anthology, Watson and Holmes, has been nominated for multiple Eisners, and I brought him on today to talk about anthologies. What's great about Brandon is he's done both. In fact, the first volume of Watson and Holmes was nominated for Eisners, and it was one complete story. And the second volume was additionally nominated for Eisners, and it was an anthology series. So I brought him in to talk about both. But before I do that, I want to remind you that our Kickstarter, Monsters and Other Scary Shit, a monster anthology about monsters, is live on Kickstarter now. The book is $15 for a PDF or $40 for the hardcover edition. And that hardcover edition is pretty fantastic. There's spot UV. We'll be doing glow-in-the-dark eyes if we hit our stretch goal, glossy art paper, 224 pages, and of course, hardcover. So head on over to monsteranthologycomic.com right now. I'll wait. Pause this, head on over, back, come back, and enjoy this episode with Brandon Perlow. Take it away, Brandon. Tell us what you're passionate about these days.
I'm really passionate about, science fiction in general, comics. Love that stuff since I was 13 years old. My brother got me into a lot of science fiction as I got older. Just really want to see more interesting stuff coming out there. So I feel like a lot of people are caught up on certain styles of science fiction, and I'd like to see that expanded upon.
I totally agree with you. It feels like science fiction goes in waves and spurts where you'll see everything will be grounded science fiction, then everything will be like cyberpunk, and then everything will be futuristic dystopian. And it would be nice to get a wider breadth of all this stuff happening at all times.
Yeah.
So
you were mentioning to the other author on the 5th, I think you were interviewing the science fiction writer, you were mentioning Ringworld, and that's one of my favorite books of all time.
Yeah, mine too. I actually had read it a couple weeks before, and it's not easy to get up to the top of the list, but as far as sci-fi goes, it's just it's so good and weird and unique, and I mean, you know me, I'm all about weird and unique stuff cross-genre.
Yeah. And I feel that's what sci-fi is missing these days. Even Star Wars doesn't go weird and wonderful that, Ringworld gets to. There's a lot of stuff that Larry Niven did that was really out there. And this was stuff he did in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And it's even now, no one's catching up to it. And now we have the technology to show this kind of stuff. And I'm hoping we get to, see some of that. I mean, that other movie that's coming out, that weird science fiction one, that French one that's coming out, I forgot the name of it, but it's based on a comic book. That one looks like it could be a real interesting movie since The Fifth Element came out.
Yeah, there's always this sort of once a year or once every 2 or 3 years where you get this one that is really cool original sci-fi, and I find myself waiting between gaps and filling in the gaps with Rogue One until something like District 9 hits.
Yeah, exactly.
So is that your next project? Is your next comic book a big sci-fi one?
Yeah, the next one that I'm personally developing, that I'm going to be doing the art for, that I've been developing for years, it's called Nimbus. It's a science fiction, very epic comic, very much in the vein of, classic science fiction of authors I've liked. It's a lot of, cross genres in there. It's just going to be very far future and very more out there than the stuff that's out. I'm really trying to make something that's a very original feeling and looking science fiction series, which I feel hasn't been done in a long time.
Yeah. So that's sort of a project you've been developing. I mean, I remember I've known you for years, and you've been developing it since even before Watson and Holmes. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's been developed since I was in college, which was 20 years ago.
So what keeps something burning in the back of your mind as a creator as something that you have to do? I mean, does it keep coming back to you over and over, or have you been actively developing it for the last?
Yeah, it's been on and off for the past couple of years, so it's like, you kind of get sidetracked because there's another project that has to get done, and, there are certain things about the story that just weren't quite hitting it. It's like all the world building's been developed, but like the actual plot and some of the character development, just certain things weren't hitting things, and it's sort of like, you put that in the shelf for a while, and then you have someone else look at it and, maybe put some ideas to help make it work because I'm not a writer, so I have to hire another writer to work with me. So it's just a matter of like finding a writer that understands what I want to do with it, but like can bring something else that can make it great.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing because you are sort of the producer or editor of the books that you're putting out, right? You're not writing them or doing the art on them.
I've done some color correction, but I'm mostly been like a pseudo editor. I mean, I had editors on these books, but like the last one I did, Watson and Holmes Volume 2, I was kind of functioning partly as an editor. So no, I haven't. It was really none of. It's for me. It's like I don't consider myself the best like realistic like artist in the sense someone who can draw regular things. It's like it's probably something I would lose enthusiasm for if I tried to draw it for a long period of time. So that's part of the reason why I couldn't draw Watson Holmes because there's so many other artists who could draw like real world stuff really well. Just make it believable. Me, I'd be like searching for reference and stuff. So it's like at least with science fiction, I can pretty much invent everything I want and not worry about it as much. So for me, it was like more of just babysitting the project versus actually, putting my hand to it and doing artwork.
For sure. Now this is so this is the interesting thing for me because this is the first time I've really been mostly hands off. I mean, I wrote a 7-page story for the new anthology that we're in, but about 212 pages I had no part of except to look over the final art and some art and answer some questions. How do you go about putting all of this stuff together when you're only involved in, I mean, I know you're involved in every moment, but you're not actually doing like the writing or the creating. How do you go about finding these artists and making sure that and writers and making sure that they, deliver?
First of all, with some of them were working with us previously, like N. Stephen Harris, so I knew the artwork was going to be good and delivered on a timely basis. We had another person who was recommended by my assistant editor, this guy named Eli Powell, who was an art student at my old art school, and he turned out to be quite well as well. We had to give him a little bit of a scheduling help because, he was taking classes while he was doing the book. So since there was work being done on multiple chapters, it was okay for him, that it took, 4 months to get the work done versus normally you'd want it done in one or maybe 1.5.
Right, yeah, that's something that I really love about anthologies and thinking about, doing an anthology like the one that you did for Watson and Holmes is you can almost get it done in you can be much more ambitious because almost all of the creative teams are working somewhat simultaneously.
Somewhat. There's still scheduling conflicts and weirdness that you have to deal with. Because someone can be sick. Someone like, for example, our colorist got married, and like literally it was like 2 weeks we didn't hear from him, and then he came back and went back to work. But it's stuff like that you have to deal with. Like all these things happening at once. And the problem is like if the coloring doesn't happen, then you can't send those pages to someone else. So it's like if one person is late, sometimes it's like a house of cards. So it's not as easy as it seems. That much I will say.
Yeah, no, I'm used to doing work with one artist or one artist at a time. We'll finish a bunch of pencils and then I'll work with the inker a lot. This was sort of dealing with it was as if I was doing 220 pages simultaneously all together at one time. So like there were 30 teams. I was getting notes from 30 teams all at once about their books. Almost it felt like 1 or 2 days apart from each other. Did you ever have that sort of thing happen to you?
Probably a week from each other because I had less people in teams. But I would have like 2 letterers working at once, so one would be working on one story and one would be working on another type of deal. And you just want to make sure that the styles are somewhat consistent looking.
For sure. So let's go back for a second because I want to make sure everyone knows what we're talking about because I brought you on to talk about anthologies because our anthology, Monsters and Other Scary Shit, is live on Kickstarter now. And you have a very interesting sort of take, I think, on anthologies. Could you tell us a little bit about the main project that you've been working on for a few years?
Yes, it's called Watson and Holmes. It's the first African-American Sherlock Holmes series in modern-day Harlem, where both of the protagonists are African-American. And, the first volume came out in 2013. We were nominated for 2 Eisners in 2014, and we won 4 Glyph Awards, which was the Black Comic Awards. So it got some critical attention. And we decided, we had some work done on some extra issues, so we decided to complete it for Volume 2. The idea was Volume 2 would be a bunch of short story, individual issues like the original Sherlock Holmes, where he'd have a big story and then you'd have a whole book of like short stories. And the idea was to have these sort of like in between the next big arc that we would have for Volume 3, which is still, in the development stages, but the idea was we would have individual stories for Volume 2 so that we can, just have one and done stories.
Yeah, I thought that was a very interesting sort of dynamic shift. You don't often see somebody go from, doing a long form book, because Volume 1 was all one story, to doing like little episodes that have anything to do with, the production schedule and getting something out quicker or cost, or was it all just this sort of thought of like, I want to really mimic how the old Sherlock Holmes stories went?
I would say it's a little bit of everything. Carl, our main writer, was going through some day job changes at the time, and so we figured, all right, we'll give Carl like 6 months to ramp up so that we could do another main volume, and we'll fill it in between with single story issues. And this was in 2014, and as the saying goes, things don't go quite as they planned, for me monetarily and some other things. So by the time it was like the end of 2014, we were just like, let's just finish this volume and, take it to Kickstarter and just get it done. And, we'll consider newer chapters later.
Yeah, that makes a whole bunch of sense. Being as we're on Kickstarter now, like it makes complete sense to do the anthology part and then come to Kickstarter. I mean, when I first met you, you had, I think, just finished or soon before had just finished raising $20,000 for this Volume 2. Is that accurate? Right, that was around that time, right?
About 21. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's about what we're looking to raise. And I just remember you telling me these sort of like, I almost had a heart attack getting to 20,000 because we weren't that close at the end, and we had to like really push. If you had to do it again, what would you do to make sure that you weren't having that you weren't having a heart attack at the end, hoping that you made it, to make sure that you got to that 20,000 a little bit quicker?
Right. Well, first of all, just various situations. I couldn't do the Kickstarter till like July, and if I was to do it again, I would have like probably waited later, because July I launched literally during the weekend of San Diego Comic-Con. So it's sort of like you're competing with Comic-Con for people's money going to the Comic-Con. You got over 100,000 people there spending their money at the Comic-Con and reading news about the Comic-Con. So you're being they're being overwhelmed by this, so they're not going to pay attention to you. So it was literally the last week I was only hitting 13,000, and if it wasn't for like Gail Simone or Kelly Sue DeConnick posting about how much they love the series and promoting the Kickstarter the last week, I wouldn't have made it. So it was literally those two were responsible probably for the last $7,000 to make the Kickstarter happen.
That's awesome. And did you reach out to them, or was it completely like a fluke that they both caught it at the same time?
They both pretty much talked about it at the same time, because we were being Eisner nominated at that time. So it's sort of like, yeah, this was after the show, and they were just talking about, oh, this is a great book. We loved it on Comixology. So it basically, with their social networks, which are huge, huge. They were able to get us a lot of the last minute pledges that we needed.
All right. If you were to do it again, would you try and reach out to these people maybe before the campaign, give them copies of the book? Maybe not those two people, but like more of the creators in your inner circle? Or do you think you did a good job of that?
I think I did a pretty good job of that. I think, those two were the unexpected ones. I think it's just a matter of, having a $21,000 Kickstarter reward is a really tough thing to get. Because the last one we did 16,000. I figured, all right, we were known, people bought our books. We could easily get 21. And it's one of those things where it's like, Kickstarter's a lot harder than that. If I would have just put in maybe 10,000, I might have still been able to get the 20 goal, but as stretch goals, it would have been less stressful. It's just, there was a Kickstarter budget that I had in mind, and then there was, quote, the real budget that I wanted, which was even more than 21,000, because I'm like, well, if I get the real one that I want, it's like I get my printing costs and my production costs finished, and I have a lot less stress. So I think the problem is that I probably timed it a little wrong. If I would have timed it in between New York and San Diego Comic-Con, I might have done better.
All right. So something like September.
Yeah.
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 As I find that's like my sweet spot. Not only is it my birthday, so I tend to launch a project on my birthday, but then around this time's usually good too. I mean, the beginning of the year has been seeing a lot of really good Kickstarter projects in recent years.
Mm-hmm.
So my question. So, do you think? What do you think? Why did you think you had? Do you think you had more problems with the second one because it was an anthology, or do you think it was just like you would overestimated the reach, or what do you think contributed to the fact that I know you got a little bit higher, but sort of struggled to reach the same goal as the first volume?
Yeah, I think first of all, I had more help because I had Zach as my assistant editor functioning as, helping marketing and helping run the Kickstarter. So when you have another guy on your team, that's a lot easier. So for volume 2, I was doing everything myself. It was definitely economically, I wasn't doing as well when I was kickstarting volume 2. So, just less freelance work and so on. And also I had to move back to LA from New Jersey. So driving cross country and, just trying to find myself back in LA, that was another issue. So it's just everything coming in at once,
right,
to do this. I mean, I literally drove from New Jersey to LA for, dropped my stuff off at my friend's house and then drove to the Comic-Con. So it was just pure insanity for that month, and then starting the Kickstarter. So I think I overextended myself, and that was part of the problem. I think after doing this a second time, it's like, all right, now I know what I would want to do a third time, and that even goes down to reward levels that I had. So. But I think I overestimated the reach, and I think again it was just because it was just a bad time to launch the Kickstarter. It was just no one was really primed to get the information where they were more interested in what Marvel and DC were doing that week.
Right. I think this is really important to think about when you're planning to launch any product, where it's life happens, and that has to be inside your thought process. You will not, if I had an 80-hour a week job right now, I would not be able to run a Kickstarter as effectively because I would be tired at the end of the day and just scrambling to get by. So you need to take that into account.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Running a Kickstarter is pretty much a full-time job.
Yeah, for sure. And there's one other thing that I definitely think we should mention because, timing is important. I was talking with my buddy about why most projects were struggling at the end of last year, November and December, that were launching. And I said, look, it's not Kickstarter. It's that everyone is in holiday mode. They're not willing to drop money that they need to spend on gifts Like, they want tangible stuff. On top of that, you're going against, like, people that are putting out amazing deals, and you're not putting out an amazing deal. And I think it's the same thing with the summer. You know, most people are on holiday. They don't really want to think about, like, spending money. Like you said, like, big blockbusters are launching. Marvel and DC are having launching. Like, your little comic, even if it's a huge comic, your little comic, comparatively to Marvel and DC, is tough to get any market penetration.
Absolutely.
And I think people don't think about that nearly enough. I had someone who ran a Kickstarter, like, I was looking at it, started a couple days before Christmas, and I was like, what person right now is going to pledge to a campaign when all they're thinking about is Christmas?
And you know, a lot of people are not financially well off during the holidays. It's just the way it is. So, you know, they're not going to be, you know, spending money in a Kickstarter. It's like, you know, there's this, to me at least, because I work in the visual effects and post industry during my day job, it's sort of like, you know, dead zone. Nothing gets done in Hollywood for, like, you know, December. So it's sort of like you're hoping that January has a good recovery.
Yeah, I mean, for me, December's the worst. I mean, look, I love seeing my family and going home and doing all that stuff, but, like, I make no money in December because I sell gifts for you. Like, my books are not, like, giftable, really, like, because nobody knows what they are. So, like, I'm not making any money, and I have to spend thousands of dollars to go home. So the last thing that I want to do when I'm making no money is, like, back a bunch of Kickstarters and think about how much more money I have to spend. And, like, that psychological component, I think most people, when they're running campaigns or even when they're at shows or whatever, don't think about the psychological part of it. They just say, oh, well, I'm not selling, so my book must be bad or something.
Absolutely.
Like that.
Yeah, I think timing's half the battle.
Yeah, I mean, I find that for me, the good times are like January to March, when people are getting their returns, and also when they're flush with that Christmas cash. And then May is all right, and then like September is really good because September has the most birthdays, so most people are born in September, so they all are flush again with birthday cash. And then obviously, because my books are all about monsters, like, October ends up being good because, like, it's Monster Month.
However, October is New York Comic Con as well, so it's like you got to make sure you time it probably significantly later from New York.
Yeah, I like launching, like, once kids go back to school, so, like, Labor Day, and then ending around, like, the first week of October, I think is a good time. As you get, October is really good if you already have books, for me, because I have books. This is now switching the conversation a little bit from Kickstarter to, like, I have books in my hand, so October is really good because people want monster things.
Absolutely, because I did quite well at Stan Lee's in LA this year, so there was lots of people coming over, and I had books ready to sell, so it was a good time for that.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like, this goes back to the psychology part, but I want to go because I want to talk about and make sure we have time for the main thing that I want to cover today, which is, like, your top 5 list. Now, you ran an anthology, and you ran a non-anthology, and I want to know what the top 5 things that you took away from running your anthology were. Let's go with, like, just number 1, and then what's going to happen is you explain, and then we'll talk about it for a little bit, and then go to the next one. Cool?
Okay, absolutely. I would say theme subject is number 1.
Okay, can you explain that a little bit?
Basically, you know, for yours, of course, it's just monster stories, so yours is an anthology of monsters. Mine, of course, is, you know, Sherlock Holmes short stories. So basically that they all take place, you know, around the same time, you know, just one after the other. You know, you look at science fiction anthologies, you know, you would have like for example, like Robert Silverberg, I think is one of the best short story guys. They would always release anthologies of his stories. So it's basically, you know, you can go even more like specialized, like you could do like heist stories, as an anthology, from different time periods, for example, So I think you can go really tight on the theme subject or go more broad in an anthology. So that's what I'd say is the first part.
Yeah, to me, I definitely have seen anthologies that I don't understand the theme when I've finished reading them, and that is very dangerous because when you're pitching that anthology to somebody to buy, it's like, oh, this is just all sorts of tone and subject matter and stuff. I don't know if I will like this, or maybe I'll like one story. Whereas when you have a tight theme, like, hey, do you like Sherlock Holmes? This is good Sherlock Holmes. Do you like the Beyond anthology is a good example for sci-fi, or the Smut Peddler anthology, or Titty
Yeah,
Time for like porn, um, or Cautionary Fables and Fairy Tales for like if you like fairy tales.
sure.
All of those ones resonate with like, okay, like if I like softcore porn, this I want Titty Time. If I like sci-fi, I'm gonna like this. If I
Yeah,
like horror, if I like crime, if I like Sherlock Holmes, like I think the tighter you can make that anthology, the better your sales will be.
sure. I could see that.
Yeah. And I also think the better that you're going to find the people that can do really good stories in that genre too.
Sure.
Okay, what's number two?
Variety of creators. Um, Now, this, of course, is not the Robert Silverberg example, but like for my instance, I've had everything from, established comic book writers to a really up and coming mystery writer, like Lindsay Fay. She's got quite a few books that are in the New York Times and that have been very critically acclaimed, and I think they sell pretty well too. So, and she is absolutely one of the best experts on Sherlock Holmes. So she's someone you don't normally think of as someone who writes a comic book, but we wanted her to be involved because they're like, well, she really knows her stuff. Why don't you take a stab at, writing a story or two for us? So just being able to get different fans of different creators to maybe get in our book.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that is another fantastic point. For me, for the anthology, I wanted to get some super established creators, some like sort of journeyman creators, so people like me who have some following in a certain area of the country, but may not be maybe not nationally. People who've worked on some brands that people might recognize, and then some new people because, like for me, this is a great time to showcase new talent and sort of bring them up. And anthology is the great time to have a varied amount of creators who you may never have worked with or have them try something that's kind of out of their comfort zone, maybe.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's the point. So, like Eli Powell, actually, our guy, our book is his first work, but ironically, he just won like last year, like the Wildstorm art contest or something that they have all for these creators. Like every year they do that. So it's like, in 5 years, he might be the next big thing, but we could say, hey, he did a story for us first.
Yeah, for sure. And you'll always have that anthology to potentially sell for, in the future. In the future. I mean, I know Brandon won an Eisner for his work on the second volume.
He got nominated.
He got nominated for an Eisner for that thing, and now he's writing Transformers, and he was on Agent Carter, and all sorts of stuff. And that, part of that you can always look back to and say, hey, do you like Brandon's work? Well, he's one of his earlier things that he did was in this anthology.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that's really important. I mean, I have work by Lee Cosi, who's a Star Wars watercolorist in this book. We have Aaron Alexovich doing the cover, and we have some people that have followings all across the country. And that's one of my favorite things about anthologies is yes, you have to get through some stories that may be totally inconsistent or not, depending on your anthology, but you get to see sometimes the first works of these people who could be burning up the industry one day.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what's number three?
I would say the quality of the work of creators, because I think an anthology gives a perfect opportunity for a creator to go all out on something like reestablish themselves or develop a new style. Um, and like, of course, for newer creators to like absolutely show like what they can do. So it gives a good opportunity to like really editorially keep the quality up.
Yeah, this is another great one. I mean, especially I know your anthology pieces were longer, but for mine, like it was between 1 and 15 pages. So I had some younger creators who like wanted to like show what they can do and make a great story, and they went balls out and did 15. And I had some like some more established creators say, I'm always been known for this kind of monster thing. I'd like to like expand my reach and sort of play with it. So yeah, I totally agree with you in that too.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it offers creators a way of just showing, hey, this is what I could do that you've never seen before. And I think keeping that quality up, like from all the creators to a high level, is an important thing in an anthology. I think you don't want any story to be, a meh one. You want them all to be at least really good.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I like to think that anthologies should all be really good, and never drag on. So, like, at the point where you're like, oh, like, okay, I'm done with this, it should end at that point. Even if, but like, the nice thing about the anthology, you always know there's another story if you didn't like that one.
True, true.
Okay, what's your number 4?
Size, which is kind of goes to that last point. I think definitely bigger gives you a lot of value, but sometimes you're better with something that's tight and precise.
Oh man, can I speak to this one? As somebody doing a 224-page anthology that's half color, half black and white, tonally across the board, and full of like 1 page to 15 pages. It's been like, I wish that it had been maybe 70 pages less, because frankly, once you get above 150 pages, you're getting out of the maximum profit zone for books. I mean, to me, the max profit zone, I've been doing this a little while, is 100 to 150 pages. At that price point, you could make a book for $3 and sell it for $30 if it's hardcover, or 2 for $20. Once you go above like 170 or 180, your costs are now closer to $4 a book, but you can't sell that book for $40 because, like, unless you go oversized, very few people are going to spend $40 on a. Well, I hope that that's not true, but less people are going to be able to willing to spend $40 for a 224 volume book. They would rather spend $30 a piece on 250-page books.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that actually. But you've actually been doing more production and hardcovers than I have, so you know the numbers better than I do in that regard.
Well, it's just like when you think about it, you just think about how much you'd be willing to spend for a hardcover. It's probably around $30, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, and that kind of goes even if it's a huge book. Like, it's not the book size that matters. It's like, okay, for a soft cover, I'm kind of maxing out at 20. For a hardcover, I'm maxing out at 30. Yeah, you can double, like, the size. For instance, Ichabod and Katrina combined are just a little bit more than this whole anthology. For only $10 more. But when you say, hey, this is $40, you're getting past the range that people think is acceptable in their brains. Again, psychology.
No, that's true. That's true.
So yeah, I often thought about whether I should do 200 pages or like what I should do, but I ended up just saying, fuck it. I just want the biggest, boldest, baddest anthology, and I'll fix it on the next one. Okay, so what's the last one? What's number 5?
Your packaging. I think just how it's put together, in terms of like the actual production, the actual, product itself. If you have any extra stuff in there, really good info on the creators, just stuff that you normally maybe wouldn't put in a regular book, but you want to add in an anthology.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this goes to every book. So especially if you're going to price yourself above the market. If you're going to price your book above the market, there better be something. So for instance, on our anthology, we're doing a glow in the dark UV spot. Hopefully we'll have hit it already. We're recording a couple months early, but if we hit $20,000, we're doing a hardcover wraparound. You have to add sort of these touches so that when people says, wait, why am I paying $40 for this? You go, okay, here are the massive reasons why. And they go, okay, that now is worth it for me.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the packaging is everything. I generally package toward the the con market. So like my covers end up being wildly difficult to place, especially the anthology covers. But you really have to think about like what's your end goal here. My end goal is, to sell it on Kickstarter and at cons and have this be a coffee table book that you like show other people. And so I want to make it feel like an art book. But there are other people that are like, I just want, I want it on newsprint and cheap and like this is about like putting it in your back pocket and crumpling up and then handing it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So and I think Watson and Holmes really like does a nice sort of balance between them. I mean, I love the covers; they feel like high end, and there's like extra stuff in there. So, can you talk about a little bit about the methodology for how you decided on the packaging for your anthology part?
Yeah, pretty much. Hold on a second. I've always liked, again, you got to have a strong cover. That's the first thing that's going to bring into the attention. And even the back cover should look nice and have a really good, what's it called, what they talk about? What's that paragraph you put on the, what that called on the back usually?
Yeah, with the blurb thing.
Yeah. I feel that it's important that when someone gets the book, they should look at the back, get an idea of the book, and, we like to have the actual covers for each issue, because originally Volume 2 was going to be in the comic book shops, but certain things just didn't happen. So those covers were reused as chapter breaks. So each chapter, was cover art. So we like to do that. We also like to add like the original covers and like covers that weren't used but that were just still really nice. We add that in as extra art. So we try and give a little bit of value besides the actual reading material. For book 1, we added a lot more stuff for the Kickstarters for the reprint. So we've added stuff like actual character designs, color roughs, some script pages. So it's just a matter of like what we feel is proper for that volume.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you 2 questions. The first of which is if you could, as you're planning your next anthology, if you were planning an anthology now, what is the one thing you absolutely would do again? And what is the one thing that you absolutely would never do again when planning something like this again?
Wow. I would say probably make sure that absolutely all the scripts are done at the same, done before I hand off the art. I think, trying to do one team and then another, that drove me crazy. I think having all the stories done and ready to go to send to artwork is a lot better versus like having one story, the story's done, they're working on the art, but the other one, the story's not done, but we haven't submitted it to the artist. So I like to be in like all writing stage, all pencil or art stage, and then all lettering stage versus like, mixing and matching of stages. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. So you want to get all of the scripting done, and then all the penciling done, then all the inking done, then all the coloring done, then all the lettering done. Is that right?
Yeah. So instead of like going like, this book is done, this story's done, let's go to color, I would want to make sure that all the other ones are done first, and then, find out which colorists are ready and just hand them off the pages versus, figuring out, oh, is this colorist available? This one, now I got to wait if this one's available. So being able to just production line, I think, is a much better way of going about it if you have the proper time and everything else. I just feel like, when you feel like, oh, I got this deadline to have this done by the Kickstarter, blah, 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 you're going to go crazy. I would say the other thing is my big advice, and I think, this is just a Kickstarter thing, the closer your book is done to being ready, that's when you launch your Kickstarter. You don't really want to launch your Kickstarter to pay for actual artistic production, or you want to limit it, because the thing is, if you only have your book halfway done and then you're hoping your Kickstarter pays for the rest and then also your printing costs, you're going to be in a hell of hurt. And that is the one advice I could definitely give about that, is that yeah, it just, I have so much to discuss about this, but yeah, definitely try and get your stuff closer to production done before you launch.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I always try to launch after I've finished it so I can hold a proof. I actually, in the past year, have held a production proof in my hand and just saying, this is the production proof. Like, I just need the money to pay the printer, and then it's done. It's going off the printer.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And what was the thing that you would never do again?
That I would never do again? Wow, I almost got... yeah, definitely, never launch without production being done. I would say, in terms of Kickstarter, put too many different rewards that go beyond the book. I think once you go into T-shirts and other things, you drive yourself crazy, but that's more of a Kickstarter thing. In terms of anthology, never do again.
How about never launch in July?
Never launch in July, yeah. Never launch July.
All right. So as we work towards wrapping up, what are you working on now? Can you talk a little bit? Now it's been 40 minutes, so can you kind of tell us a little bit about what you're working on now again?
Yeah, the book I'm working on is actually two. We're going to eventually kickstart a book called Justice is Nocturnal. It was done by Fala Lee Hayes, and basically the book is a crime noir story with Greek mythological creatures, and it's basically a murder mystery story that involves gangsters and artwork and some other things, and it's really beautiful. The book is being colored right now by Fala, and pretty much the main penciling work was done. Most of the lettering was done, so hopefully I can get David Lanphier to finish the rest. But the book should be ready to go for Kickstarter in April, and just for a print run. So, and that was basically our web series that we did in 2014 through 15, but we never really finished it. We got maybe up to 60 pages, and the last pages were finished by Fala within the past year or so. So basically, we have enough to to give away and show off, and then pretty much, go right to print. And Nimbus, of course, is my own series, science fiction. It takes place in another world in the far future. I'd say over 1,000 years from now. So we're gonna try and do some really out there looking stuff. I'm definitely more, I would say, European influenced in my science fiction. I don't know if you're familiar with a series called Meta Barons.
No, I'm not.
Fantastic series done by, I forgot the name of the writer. The writer also did the first pass at a Dune movie. Jodorowsky. He was going to direct Dune in the 1970s, but it never happened. And he ended up writing a book called The Meta Barons. And the artwork's done by Juan Gimenez. It's an amazing book. It's got some story issues, but you can get the whole book series from Humanoids. And that's the kind of stuff I'm inspired by in terms of look. It's just, painted artwork, really full-blown epic science fiction. And I will say I'm also inspired by some anime and even, some still Marvel stuff. So there's some of that stuff that will bleed into Nimbus, but it's not going to be like, so in your face.
Awesome, man. All right, so we're going to get out of here. But before we do, I'm going to ask you the question I ask everybody, which is tell us where we can find you online and give us a piece of advice you haven't given so far.
Okay. We are at Comixology. We have both of our Watson and Holmes volumes on sale digitally on there and then Kindle on Amazon. And our website is newparadigmstudios.com. Right now it's on Facebook till we get a new site, but we have all our information over there. Nimbus has a web page on Facebook as well called Nimbus the Series. And, of course, Watson and Holmes has one on Facebook as well, which is Watson and Holmes. Eventually, later this year, once we rebuild our website, we'll put all our information there. But all the links for newparadigmstudios.com will go to Facebook. So I'll just change the link once it's time. I would say my best advice that I can give so far, as a creator, whatever you can do yourself, do that, because that will save you a ton of money. So
Awesome.
if you have to be gifted enough to be a good writer and a good artist, then do that yourself. Try to rely on less people as possible to get your work out there, because it's going to cost a lot of money, time, and aggravation. But if you're doing it yourself, it's all on your sweat.
Awesome, man. I love it. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us, brother.
Thank you so much.
So that was Brandon Perlow, publisher of New Paradigm Studios. If you liked that one, head on over and thank Brandon. Tell him how much you liked it. Like his Facebook page. Buy his book, Watson and Holmes, and check out what else he's up to. And if you like this show, head on over to thebusinessofart.us/iTunes to rate, review, and subscribe today. It takes just 30 seconds, and it helps more than you will ever know. Finally, if you dig anthologies, we have our anthology, Monsters and Other Scary Shit, a 224-page hardcover anthology about monsters, live on Kickstarter now. Head on over to monsteranthologycomic.com and pledge today. Thanks a lot, wannabes and creators. I will see you next time.